My youngest sister had always been obsessed with the so-called upholding justice even at the cost of family ties. Our eldest sister was the Crown Prince's fiancée, yet at the royal banquet, she stood tall and denounced her with righteous fervor. "Your Majesty, I accuse my eldest sister of hiding her chronic cold syndrome. She is incapable of bearing heirs for the Crown Prince and is unworthy of being his consort. I was betrothed to be the future lady of Puyang Marquisate." Then she struck again at my engagement feast, her words sharp as a blade. "I accuse my second sister of having improper relations with a man outside the family. How can such a wanton woman be fit to be the Marquis's wife?" But the final blow came when our father returned victorious from the battlefield. She knelt before the Golden Swan Hall and cried out, "Your Majesty, I accuse my father of colluding with the enemy. He may betray your sacred trust. I beg you to conduct a thorough investigation." Overnight, the general's mansion fell from grace, and all its inhabitants became prisoners. The emperor praised her for her righteousness in sacrificing family for justice, lauded her noble character, exempted her from being implicated, adopted her as his goddaughter, and bestowed upon her the title of Princess Jowie. On the day we were exiled, I begged her to prepare some food for us. She refused coldly. "You reap what you sow. One ought to live an upright life. Even if you cannot be as righteous as I am in upholding justice at the cost of family, you should at least know your place. Even if you die, it is simply your fate." I spat out a mouthful of blood and died of rage on the spot. Reborn in this lifetime, I would teach her what true upholding justice even at the cost of family ties really meant. I accuse my second sister of having improper relations with a man outside the family. How can such a wanton woman be fit to be the Marquis's wife? The familiar voice echoed in my ears. I realized that the trajectory of my past life was repeating itself in this one. I had been reborn, just one day before my engagement feast. From the days of last night to the clarity of today, it felt like I had lived half a lifetime. At the engagement feast with the young Marquis, my third sister stood there in a plain white dress, her head held high, her voice ringing out with conviction. "Young Marquis, you are a pillar of the court. I cannot bear to see you deceived into marrying a dissolute woman, even if it ruins my reputation. I must expose my second sister's true colors." I saw with my own eyes that my second sister exchanged letters with a man. She even patted him on the shoulder. Such frivolous behavior makes her unworthy of marriage, let alone marrying into the Marquisate. Then she turned to me, her expression filled with what seemed like deep sorrow. Like an incorruptible magistrate who had no choice but to sacrifice family for justice. "Second sister, your reputation is already tarnished. Why must you harm others? You should call off this engagement and set him free. Even if you spend the rest of your life with a green lantern and an ancient Buddha, repenting for your sins, there will always be a place for you in a nunnery." The entire hall was stunned. Everyone stared dumbfounded at my third sister, who stood in the center dressed in white, looking as if she were transcending the mortal world. Our eldest sister was the first to react. She rushed directly to the third sister, grabbed her arms, and spoke in a flustered panic. "Third sister, what nonsense are you talking about? This is your second sister's engagement feast. Are you trying to ruin her?" The third sister shook off her hand and declared righteously, "This concerns the young Marquis's marriage. How can I stand idly by and watch him marry and be humiliated? And you, eldest sister, you hid your chronic cold syndrome and still dared to dream of marrying the Crown Prince. If it weren't for me, the Crown Prince would never have a legitimate heir in his life. You are not even upright yourself. How dare you blame me?" My eyes narrowed slightly, and my fists clenched tightly. It was exactly like this in my previous life. Our eldest sister was so humiliated by her rebuke that her face turned deathly pale, and she could not lift her head. She stumbled and fled. She had already been too ashamed to face anyone after being publicly accused of being unable to bear children. Now, she became even more depressed day by day, and within a short time, she hanged herself. Later, I found out the truth. It was true that our eldest sister had chronic cold syndrome, but it was a lie that she was destined to be childless. It was just that the third sister had only heard half of what the doctor said. The doctor had clearly stated, "The young lady has a cold constitution. To prepare for pregnancy in the future, she must take good care of her health." But the third sister had deliberately twisted it into she cannot bear children. At the royal banquet, The third sister spoke with such certainty that our eldest sister had no way to defend herself. The Empress Dowager immediately annulled the engagement, praised the third sister for her outspokenness and deep sense of justice, and hailed her as a model for all noble ladies. After returning to the mansion, our father was so angry that he wanted to punish the third sister with family law, but she raised her chin and shouted defiantly, "We eat the Emperor's food, so we must be loyal to his affairs. Father, you only feel sorry for eldest sister but never think of the crown prince. You are simply unworthy of being a subject of the emperor." Our mother also wiped her tears and shielded the third sister. "Husband, if you want to hit someone, hit me instead." Roma only spoke the truth. Even the Empress Dowager praised her. "Why is she committing a serious crime in your eyes? It's just the position of crown prince's consort. What's the big deal?" Sniffle. Father pointed at the mother and daughter huddled together. Trembling with anger, unable to speak a word, he threw down his cane and slammed the door as he left. I watched as our eldest sister stared blankly at the mother and daughter clinging to each other, gave a bitter smile, and shook her head. I could almost understand our sister was truly disappointed in our mother. Since childhood, mother had never been close to eldest sister and me. She especially doted on our youngest sister, the third. I had always thought that it was normal for parents to favor their youngest child. I never imagined that her partiality would be so boundless that she would even sacrifice another daughter without hesitation. The annulment of the crown prince's fiancée was no trivial matter. It spread like wildfire across the entire country, and everyone was saying that the eldest daughter of the general's mansion could not bear children. At the same time, the reputation of the third Miss Song for her profound sense of justice also spread far and wide. Mother beamed with joy and gently stroked her long hair. "Our Roma's fame has spread far and wide. Now it's impossible to hide her. I'm afraid the matchmakers will be breaking down our door." The third sister turned her head in disdain. "I am inherently pure and upright, unlike some people who are full of scheming." Then she raised her head high. "Even if I marry, I will never go to a place that harbors filth and corruption." Perhaps she had tasted the sweetness from eldest sister's incident. So she did it again at my engagement feast. Her ethereal, saint-like appearance stunned everyone present, including my fiancé, Yang Zhao. His eyes were fixed on her, unblinking. I never knew there could be such a pure and refined woman in this world. Since childhood, I had loved learning martial arts from my father. When I grew up, I even secretly went to the battlefield, disguised as a man, with a mask covering my face. I worked my way up to the position of Marshal General. Only father and his trusted confidants knew about this. Everyone else thought I was weak and had gone to recuperate at our family's countryside estate. The man with whom I was exchanging letters and patting shoulders was naturally one of my subordinates. Who would have thought that the third sister would see us, and overcome by her obsession with justice, make a scene at my engagement feast? Yang Zhao made a decisive decision to call off the engagement. Although I, Yang Zhao, am not talented, I have no desire to be a cuckold. This marriage is hereby terminated. The Dowager Lady of Puyang Marquisate also held the third sister's hand and thanked her profusely. "Good girl, thank goodness for you, otherwise, our Zhao would have suffered a great injustice." Although I had no interest in Yang Zhao, I did not want to be slandered by them with such baseless accusations. I was just thinking about how to defend myself when mother rushed forward directly. "In that case, it's better to call it off." After saying that, she looked at me with a reproachful expression. "You girl, how can you not cherish your reputation? You have unnecessarily implicated your sisters in the family. You should thank your third sister. If she hadn't exposed you, you would have been divorced after marriage, which would have brought great shame to the general's mansion." Father was not at home, with mother's final decision. The engagement was called off on the grounds that my reputation was ruined. From then on, the reputation of the second Miss Song as a wanton woman spread throughout the streets and alleys. Reborn in this lifetime, the image of eldest sister's deathly pale face flashed before my eyes. She was staggering, about to flee. Yang Zhao's admiring gaze was fixed intently on the third sister in the hall, and my third sister, dressed in white that was whiter than snow, with a cold and solemn expression, looked just like a goddess descending to earth. I tightened my fists, and a malicious smile curled up at the corner of my lips. In one swift stride, I rushed forward and slapped that self-righteous face hard. A crisp slap echoed through the hall. followed by the third sister's eyes widening in disbelief. "How dare you hit me?" I kicked her to the ground, satisfied to hear the gasps of shock from the surrounding crowd. Then I pressed my toes down hard on her back. She let out a scream like a slaughtered pig. I accuse you of abusing your sister. You are cruel and heartless. I am Princess Jowie. I will have you thrown into prison. Help!" I froze for a moment, my eyes narrowing slightly. How did she know she would become Princess Jowie in the future? But her outburst could not have come at a better time. I let out a cold snort and said to everyone, "As you all can see, my third sister is clearly insane. She keeps talking nonsense about being a princess. Which family would expose the scandals of their own sisters in public instead of covering them up? And she even claims to be a princess. Isn't this a case of hysteria?" Then I lowered my head, bit my lip stubbornly, and swallowed the sob in my voice. But mother dotes on third sister and cannot bear to let others know about her illness. Even when she ruined eldest sister's marriage, mother said she was having an episode and told us to let her have her way. But this time, I really can't stand it anymore. We are all sisters, why must we always give in to her? Everyone was dumbfounded by this sudden turn of events. On one hand, they were shocked that a noble lady would hit someone in public. On the other hand, they never expected the third sister to spout such crazy nonsense. After hearing what I said, they suddenly realized, perhaps the third Miss Song really had some kind of mental illness. Mother also recovered from her shock and hurried over to push me away. "I think you're the one who's crazy. How can you say such things about your sister?" I let her push me, falling heavily to the ground. I climbed up in a state of disarray, my eyelashes trembling slightly, my eyes reddening, looking utterly wronged. As you all can see, third sister is ill and should be getting treatment. But mother always indulges her. What have eldest sister and I done wrong? The tide of public opinion instantly turned in my favor. The pointing and whispering glances all fell on mother and the third sister. Even Yang Zhao and his mother looked at us with hesitation and doubt. Song Rong stared blankly at everything happening around her, then suddenly screamed, "No, I'm not ill. I accuse my second sister of being unfilial and unkind. She is framing and slandering her own sister." I was just thinking about how to confirm her insanity when a deep, resonant voice came from not far away. "You unfilial wretch, if you're mad, why are you still coming out here to humiliate yourself?" Seeing the familiar figure walking through the door, I finally let out a sigh of relief. I knew that with mother here, I would never be able to control the situation. So last night, I had sent someone to meet father, who had just returned to the capital. Fortunately, he had arrived just in time. In my previous life, father had come too late. My reputation was completely ruined, and I had been publicly jilted. Father and mother had a violent quarrel, but it was already too late to fix anything. But now that such a scandal had erupted, this marriage was doomed anyway. Sure enough, the lady of Puyang Marquisate proposed to call off the engagement, citing that our mansion was too chaotic and that they were not worthy of allying with us. Only Yang Zhao, his gaze fixed on the third sister, his eyes filled with disbelief and reluctance. Yang Zhao had been the third sister's loyal lapdog in my past life, and it seemed he was destined to be the same in this one. Father made no attempt to keep him. In his eyes, a man who would call off an engagement so readily was not worthy of me. The third sister was locked in the firewood shed. No matter how much mother cried and pleaded, father refused to relent. He even sent for a physician ostensibly to treat the third sister's illness, but in reality, to confirm her supposed madness and spread the word far and wide. He patted my head and sighed deeply. "If only I had disciplined your third sister sooner, none of this would have happened. It's all my fault. That boy from the Yang family is no good. I'll find you a far better match later." I nodded silently. First the eldest sister, then me. Father had finally made up his mind to take action. But as the old saying goes, man proposes, God disposes. Before father could decide how to deal with the third sister, a servant came rushing in with news. She had escaped, and was already in the palace. My heart clenched tightly. I remembered that in my past life, this was exactly when she had accused our father of colluding with the enemy. I stood up abruptly, my voice sharp with urgency. How did she escape, and how did she get into the palace? Quia, my maid, trembled with fear. It was Madam Miss. She let third Miss out, and third Miss stole her palace entrance token. I took a deep breath to steady myself. "Prepare my carriage at once." I'm going to the palace. This was how it had happened in my past life. The third sister had knelt before the Golden One Hall and accused General Zhenghua, our father, of colluding with the enemy. Caught off guard, father had been thrown into the imperial prison after the embroidered uniform guard conducted their investigation. Before long, he had been given a cup of poisoned wine and executed. Upon hearing the news, mother had been stunned for a long time before following him in death. The rest of us had been exiled to Lingnan. Having been reborn, I could not let this tragedy repeat itself. The closer I got to the Golden One Hall, the more my mind felt muddled with anxiety. At last, standing at the hall's entrance, I heard the third sister's clear, resonant voice ringing out inside. Your Majesty, I, Song Rong, accuse my father, General Zhenghua, of colluding with the enemy. He may betray your sacred trust. The shock of her accusation was so great that no one noticed my arrival. I saw father staring at her with his eyes wide open, his fingers trembling violently, his lips quivering too much to form a single word. The emperor sat on his throne above, his expression unreadable. Neither anger nor amusement showed on his face. Third Miss Song, you accuse your own father of treason. Do you have any evidence? I pressed my lips together, stepped forward, and knelt down on the cold marble floor. Your Majesty, please investigate thoroughly. My third sister has long suffered from hysteria. Just a few days ago, she was claiming she was a princess. I fear her illness has flared up again. The emperor's eyebrows twitched slightly. He gave me a look that was impossible to fathom. You are the second Miss Song. I am, Your Majesty. Nonsense. The third sister stamped her foot, glaring at me fiercely. Not only do I accuse father of colluding with the enemy, but I also accuse my second sister of disguising herself as a man and secretly joining the army. She is utterly shameless. I looked at her steadily. So she had been reborn too, in my past life. She had never made this accusation. It had only been discovered before our exile. You dare to slander me as mad to stop me from speaking the truth. Black is black, white is white, even if it means the execution of my entire clan. I will speak the truth. The letters proving father's treason are in his study. You can send someone to search them right now. The emperor glanced from her to father. Minister Song, do you have anything to say for yourself? Father was clearly in immense pain, never having imagined that his own daughter would stab him in the back like this. I have a clear conscience. Your Majesty, my greatest mistake was fathering such an unfilial daughter. The emperor finally made his decision. Send the embroidered uniform guard to search the study. Wait a moment. I shuffled forward on my knees, looking directly into the emperor's eyes. I did disguise myself as a man and join the army. Your Majesty, I beg you to punish me for my crimes, but my father is loyal to the core. If the guards find no evidence of treason, I humbly ask, how will your Majesty deal with those who falsely accused a high-ranking minister? He looked at me thoughtfully. What do you want? I kowtowed deeply. Every word firm and clear. Falsely accusing a high-ranking minister of treason is a capital offense. Your Majesty, the emperor's dark eyes were deep and unfathomable, and he did not speak immediately. Meanwhile, the third sister looked at me triumphantly. Very well, if no evidence is found, I will accept my punishment, but if it is found, then it will be your head on the chopping block. Second sister, do you dare to make this bet? I stared coldly at her smug face. It's a deal. Some people were so arrogant from their past life successes that they thought themselves clever. Little did they know, she was not the only one who had been reborn. She had wanted to follow the same path as before, stepping on our corpses to climb to power, but I would not allow it. Father had once befriended a man, and they had exchanged letters for a long time. Later, he had discovered that this friend was actually a prince of the enemy kingdom. To avoid suspicion, he had cut off all contact with him, but he had not been able to bring himself to destroy their letters, instead hiding them in his study. I had no idea how the third sister had found them, but those letters had been the evidence that had sealed father's fate in my past life. Her only trump card was her knowledge of where those letters were hidden. However, I had disposed of all those letters on the very first day of my rebirth. Time dragged on, and not a single person left the Golden One Hall. Meanwhile, there was complete silence from the embroidered uniform guard sent to search the study. Many of the ministers grew restless, casting annoyed glances at the third sister. They began to think that this girl was ungrateful and disrespectful. and that her so-called upholding justice at the cost of family was nothing more than the ravings of a madwoman. The third sister, who had been so confident at first, gradually grew surprised, and finally started pacing up and down anxiously. Why is this taking so long? Are the embroidered uniform guard all useless idiots? The emperor sitting above cleared his throat softly, but did not reprimand her. I lowered my eyes, concealing the thoughts swirling in my mind. The embroidered uniform guard returned empty-handed. When the third sister heard this news, she looked completely shattered. How is this possible? She grabbed my shoulders in disbelief, shaking me violently. What did you do? It wasn't supposed to be like this. I pushed her away expressionlessly. Not supposed to be like what? Where did your certainty come from? Or is all of this just another episode of your hysteria? She shook her head frantically, as if her entire worldview had been turned upside down. It can't be. How could this happen? My voice was cold as ice. There is nothing impossible about it. Madmen belong in asylums, not here, causing trouble. I did not look at her again, but kowtowed to the emperor once more. I beg your majesty to sentence Song Rong to death for her crimes. I knelt there, refusing to rise. After a long silence, the emperor waved his hand. The third sister was dragged away by the guards. This time, not even father spoke up to defend her. He let out a deep sigh and turned his head away. Song Rong was thrown into the imperial prison. Father and I returned to the general's mansion. Mother rushed over immediately, her eyes darting behind us. Where is Ronga? Where has my Ronga gone? Father looked at her, a storm brewing in his eyes. You let her escape, didn't you? Mother froze, then tears suddenly streamed down her face. The firewood shed was damp and cold. Ronga has always been weak. How could I bear to leave her there all alone? Husband, you are her father too. How could you ruin her reputation and lock her up like that? I could not stand to watch this any longer. I stepped forward, a mocking smile curving my lips. Do you know where your precious daughter went, or what she did? What did she do? Mother stared at us blankly, looking completely bewildered. Seeing her like this, father let out a long, weary sigh. Forget it. She didn't know what would happen, but I was not willing to let her off the hook so easily. I walked up to her, my smile sharp with sarcasm. Your beloved daughter went to the Golden One Hall and accused her own father of colluding with the enemy. She wanted to have the entire general's mansion convicted of treason. We were only a hair's breadth away from being executed in the palace, father and I. Are you satisfied now, mother? The hand warmer in her hand clattered to the ground. Her eyes trembled violently with shock and fear. How is this possible? She would never do such a thing. She shook her head, stumbling backward. Then, as if she had suddenly realized something, she froze, before rushing forward to grab my shoulders, her voice frantic with panic. What about Ronga then? You two came back safely. Does that mean something has happened to Ronga? I had no desire to hide the truth from her. She was unfilial and unkind, falsely accusing a high-ranking minister of treason. The emperor has issued an edict. She will be executed on a date to be determined. No, she could hold back no longer. She let out a shrill scream and fainted on the spot. Father and I sat in his study for half the night, saying nothing. Father did not ask me what had happened to the letters. I think he had already guessed the truth. Perhaps he was regretting that he had not destroyed them himself sooner. The storm had passed, for now, but for him, having lost one daughter and fallen out of love with his wife, the pain was still deep. Little did we know that this temporary calm was nothing but an illusion. Early the next morning, the eldest sister came running to me in a panic, saying that mother had disappeared. I had a bad feeling about this, and it was not long before my premonition was confirmed. Father received word that mother had entered the palace and had handed over evidence proving his treason, but I knew that apart from those letters, which were now gone, father had never colluded with the enemy, which meant that the evidence mother had given the emperor was forged. To save her beloved third daughter, she was willing to sacrifice the entire general's mansion. The people who came to search the general's mansion were none other than Song Rong and Yang Zhao. Gone was the third sister's previous disheveled appearance. She looked radiant, her head held high in triumph. Justice may be delayed, but it will never be denied. Second sister, this time, it will be you who dies. As if remembering something, she looked at me with a meaningful smile. Some people try to change the course of fate, only to find themselves right back where they started. Some who were destined to be princesses will still become princesses. Some who were meant to be exiled may end up with an even worse fate. Don't you agree, second sister? I laughed softly. It seemed she had guessed that I had been reborn too. Yang Jiao also frowned at me, looking at me as if I were nothing but garbage. I can't believe I was almost fooled by you. Accusing your own sister of madness in public, you are truly disgusting. Luckily, Madame Song upheld justice at the cost of her own family and personally delivered the evidence. To make amends to Rong'er, the emperor has issued an edict to adopt her as his goddaughter and bestow upon her the title of Princess Jiaoyi. Song Xiao, you reap what you sow. After a long moment, I lowered my head and laughed softly to myself. You're right, you reap what you sow. The imperial prison was damp and cold. Father, the eldest sister, and I were locked up together. Mother never came to visit us. The woman who was the true mastermind behind all this had vanished without a trace. As if she had never existed, I stared blankly at the bright full moon outside the tiny window, letting out a soft sigh. Father, do you believe me now? Can we finally launch our rebellion? After a long silence, I heard Father's dry, hoarse voice. I want to hear her admit everything with her own mouth. The eldest sister looked at us in confusion. What does that mean? I turned my head to look at her. Elder sister, have you never thought that mother's excessive love for the third sister is unnatural? What do you mean? A slow smile spread across my lips, laced with faint mockery. Because she is not father's daughter, her real father is none other than the reigning emperor. It was something I had only confirmed later. Song Rong was the emperor's illegitimate child. In my past life, Song Rong had been granted the title of princess and showered with endless honors. Even more favored than the emperor's own biological daughters, I had always found it inexplicable. After being reborn, I ordered an investigation into the truth of events that had transpired more than a decade ago. Sure enough, I uncovered the shocking truth. More than 10 years ago, while father was stationed at the border, mother had caught the eye of the then crown prince, now the emperor. He had taken her by force, hiding their affair from the world. Caught up in the tangled web of their illicit love, mother had fallen for him and conceived the third sister. Though Song Rong was born prematurely, she had been as healthy as a full-term infant. No one in the general's mansion had ever suspected a thing. For one thing, father's love for mother ran deep and unwavering. For another, mother had always been known for her timid, submissive nature. No one would have believed she was capable of such a betrayal. Father had never noticed the shift in mother's affections. He continued to dote on her as always, completely oblivious that the love in her eyes when she looked at him had long faded, replaced by overwhelming guilt, a guilt that extended to the two daughters she had borne him, robbing her of any patience for them. By the time the third sister was old enough to walk and talk, father had finally returned to the capital. Plagued by fear of their secret being exposed, mother had severed all ties with the emperor once and for all. For reasons unknown, whether he had grown tired of her or simply lost interest, the emperor had not tried to stop her, letting her go without a fight. Our family seemed to return to the idyllic days of a loving mother and obedient children, but it was all a facade. Gradually, Song Rong's outspoken, self-righteous personality began to emerge, along with mother's blatant favoritism. I had once thought Song Rong's cruel nature was innate, but during my investigation, I discovered that her wet nurse had been placed in the mansion by the emperor himself. Her actions, her so-called upholding justice at the cost of family, had all been carefully orchestrated and guided by someone behind the scenes. Perhaps the emperor's seduction of mother had never been purely about love, there had always been ulterior motives at play. I pulled out a small pill from my sleeve and handed it to father. If you want to hear mother confess the truth with her own lips, you must take this medicine. Father, among the three of us, father, the eldest sister, and me, mother still harbored a shred of guilt only toward father. This was a pill that induced a state of suspended animation, making the user appear dead. After returning from the palace, I had told father everything and laid out my plan to set a trap. True to form, mother's love for her daughter had blinded her. She had stolen the forged evidence I had left out for her. With irrefutable proof presented by the wife and daughter of the accused himself, the general's mansion had been raided, and we had been thrown into the imperial prison. But we had long ago devised a way to escape. Father had been skeptical, so I would prove it to him. Word spread quickly that General Zhengguo was critically ill. The eldest sister and I banged on the prison door, screaming for help. The guards exchanged glances before walking away indifferently. Eventually, an imperial physician was sent to examine him. He pressed his fingers to father's pulse, shook his head gravely, sighed deeply, and left without a word. No other physicians came, not a single dose of medicine, not even a bowl of porridge was brought to us after that. 3 days later, the last person we expected to see arrived. It was Mother. She reached out to father through the bars of the cell, her voice choked with sobs. My husband. Father's breathing was shallow and labored. His voice exhausted. Nyaunyanyo, why did you betray me? Tears streamed down Mother's face as she wiped them away with trembling hands. I couldn't bear to watch Ronga die. She is my flesh and blood, so you were willing to watch all of us die instead. Cough, cough. He stared at her, his face flushed with anger. After a long, stunned silence, he let out a bitter laugh. His child, she is the one who makes you so happy. Mother froze, her pupils dilating with shock and terror. She waved her hands frantically, shaking her head. No, that's not true. Father lay weak and helpless on the cold stone floor, but his gaze locked onto hers with unwavering intensity. I will ask you one last time, who is Song Rong's real father? Mother stood rooted to the spot, her flailing hands suddenly freezing in midair as if paralyzed by fear. It is I, a deep, resonant voice echoed through the gloomy, damp prison. A figure clad in imperial yellow robes stepped into view. He walked slowly toward father, his dark eyes cold and unfathomable. Since you are on the verge of death, I see no need to hide the truth any longer. I told you long ago that I loved Nyaunyanyo, yet you, relying on our childhood friendship, stole her away from me. I could have accepted that. After all, we were once brothers, and women are but clothes to be discarded. I was willing to let you have her. But you were so stubbornly unyielding, even after I ascended to the throne. You dared to address me as your equal, to meddle in my affairs and tell me what to do. What gave you the right? Was it the 300,000 troops under your command? Father stared at him in disbelief, clutching a handful of straw tightly in his trembling fist. You were the one who said that as an emperor, you were lonely, and told me not to stand on ceremony with you. That was in the past. The emperor's voice suddenly boomed, his eyes burning with hatred as he glared at father. I am the Son of Heaven now. The Son of Heaven has no need for brothers, and the Son of Heaven certainly has no need for a subject whose achievements outshine the throne, a subject who could usurp the crown at any moment. You grew far too arrogant, Song Fei. I could no longer tolerate you. You were revered by the people and the military alike. I had no other choice but to strike at what you loved most. Only if your closest family members accused you of treason would the people of the realm ever believe it. Mother stood there, dumbfounded, as if she had finally grasped the crux of his words. You mean, you lied to me, all this time? It was because of him. The emperor wrapped an arm around her waist, shooting a triumphant smile at father. How can you call it a lie? My love for you was always genuine. Father could contain himself no longer. He spat out a mouthful of blood and lost consciousness. When father woke again, it was evening. He could barely move his hands. He lifted his eyelids weakly to look at me. Do it, Xiao Xiao. I nodded and gently closed his eyes for him. Then I exchanged a glance with the eldest sister. Together, we rushed to the door of the cell, crying and screaming at the top of our lungs. Help, is anyone there? No one paid us any heed. But it was not long before 2 guards arrived to carry father's corpse out of the cell. The eldest sister tugged nervously at my sleeve. Xiao Xiao, do you think this will work? What if something goes wrong? I shook my head. The 2 guards were my men. Father would be spirited away and replaced in no time. And then it would be time for the eldest sister and me to die. Word of General Zhengguo's death from a severe illness spread rapidly from the imperial court to the streets and alleys of the capital. Public opinion was divided. Some argued that the charges of treason against the general were suspicious. Others insisted that with his own wife and daughter testifying against him, there could be no doubt of his guilt. He had simply grown too powerful and arrogant, daring to defy the imperial court. Before long, all other voices were drowned out by a single, unified cry. He deserved to die. His death was not nearly enough to atone for his crimes. We could hear the shouts even from inside the prison. I knew without a doubt that the imperial court had a hand in manipulating public opinion. The eldest sister trembled with rage, but I held her back. Be patient. A moment's impatience could ruin everything we've worked for. While everyone's attention was fixed on the question of whether General Zhenghua had truly committed treason, no one noticed that a fire had quietly broken out in the imperial prison in the dead of night. The fire claimed the lives of the late general's 2 daughters. Enraged by the tragic accident, the emperor smashed a valuable ink slab to the ground and ordered a thorough investigation into the cause of the fire, with the general's mansion already reeling from a string of deaths. Another tragedy was the last thing the court needed. Soon, rumors began to circulate among the people that the emperor was far too cruel and ruthless, seeking to exterminate the entire Song clan without mercy. In a secluded courtyard on the outskirts of the capital, the eldest sister and I were soon reunited with father. He looked years older, his temples streaked with grey hair, but when he looked at the eldest sister and me, his eyes were still filled with the same tender affection. Xiao Xiao, you did well, you were right. The emperor has humiliated me beyond all bearing. If I do not fight back, how can I call myself your father? I have already contacted my old subordinates in the northwest. The day we march back into the palace will be the day we avenge ourselves. While we busied ourselves with preparations for our rebellion, the emperor made an announcement to the court and the public. The newly appointed Princess Jiaoyi would be granted a grand princess mansion of her own, and Yang Jiao, Marquis of Puyang, would be chosen as her husband. The wedding was set for the 3rd day of the 3rd lunar month, when spring was in full bloom. This joyous occasion temporarily overshadowed the grim truth that the Song clan had been all but wiped out. Anyone with half a brain could see through the emperor's scheme. He was using the princess's marriage as a way to curry favor with the military, to win over the loyalty of the 300,000 troops who had once served under General Zhenghua. For a time, Princess Jiaoyi was the most powerful and revered woman in the entire imperial palace. The orioles sang, the grass grew lush and green, and spring bloomed in all its splendor. The 3rd day of the 3rd lunar month arrived, not only the auspicious day chosen for the princess's wedding, but also the day we had set for our rebellion. Song Rong's wedding procession never made it out of the palace gates. It was surrounded and intercepted by our men before it could even depart. The 300,000 troops the emperor had thought were firmly under his control had defected at the last moment. He had always prided himself on his cleverness, never realizing that everything had been unfolding according to father's plan all along. I had been assigned the task of capturing Song Rong. Clad in her bright red wedding gown, she stared at me in utter disbelief, her veil falling to the ground as she stumbled backward. How are you still alive?" Her eyes darted wildly around at the soldiers surrounding her. Realizing that something was terribly wrong, she took another step back, screaming at the top of her lungs, "What do you think you're doing? Is this treason? Someone help me, guards!" She pointed a trembling finger at me, her eyes blazing with hatred. "I will report you to Father Emperor for this rebellion. Song Xiao, your days are numbered." I let out a cold laugh, slapping her hand away. I stepped closer to her, my voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Father Emperor, you call him that so affectionately, does it feel good? Song Rong, to have climbed into your precious princess's seat by stepping on the corpses of your own family." She stumbled backward in terror, glancing frantically from side to side. When she realized that no one was coming to her aid, she bit down hard on her lower lip, forcing herself to look calm. "What do you mean? Stepping on your corpses? You all got exactly what you deserved. I was merely upholding justice, exposing your crimes to the world. As for the title of princess, it is a reward for my unwavering loyalty to the throne. You're just jealous, aren't you? You've gone mad with envy." "Jealous?" I shook my head, unable to hold back a laugh. "How absurd." I quickly composed my expression, fixing her with a cold, piercing gaze as I took another step toward her. "Your justice, does it consist of betraying your own family, of sacrificing the lives of everyone you claim to love, if you were so eager to champion justice? There is no shortage of injustice in the world for you to fight against." I raised a hand, pointing toward the palace gates. "But no, you chose to target your own flesh and blood instead." Cornered against the wall, she stared at me in terror, her voice trembling so badly she could barely form a coherent sentence. How should I know anything about what goes on outside the palace walls? What does it have to do with me?" I laughed again. So that was it. She was nothing but a coward who only dared to bully those closest to her. Even if she had been manipulated and guided by others, The venom in her nature was something no upbringing could ever teach. I lifted my foot and kicked her hard to the ground, smiling coldly as I heard her scream of pain. "Help! Someone help me!" Her wedding gown was already in tatters. She scrambled forward on all fours beneath my feet, utterly humiliated and defeated. "Song Xiao! How dare you commit treason? You were supposed to die in your past life. How dare you change the course of fate? Don't you fear divine punishment?" "Oh, I'm trembling with fear," I sneered, leaning down to whisper mockingly in her ear. "Reborn once more, and you're still this stupid. Did you really think that princess title was a reward for your loyalty?" The body beneath my foot froze mid-crawl. What do you mean?" I stopped pressing down on her and lifted her chin with my hand. My voice cold and eerie. "Because he was your real father all along." Her eyes widened in shock, staring at me blankly. A kaleidoscope of emotions flickered across her face: recognition, pain, and finally, utter terror that drained the color from her cheeks. Her lips trembled, barely forming a sound. "So that's how it was. That's how it was." My eyes narrowed slightly, a sudden thought flashing through my mind. I tightened my grip on her chin. "Song Rong, how did you die in your past life? You had it all, didn't you? A princess, beloved by the emperor. So how did you end up dead?" She flinched as if struck, her entire body bristling like a frightened hedgehog. She began to thrash wildly, her eyes dimming until they were completely empty of all light and life. "No, that wine wasn't poisoned. He wouldn't kill me. He wouldn't." I nodded slowly, a cruel smile tugging at my lips. "Let me guess, someone found out about your true identity, didn't they? And to keep the secret from getting out, that someone silenced you permanently, and that someone was your own father, the emperor himself." She screamed like a madwoman, scrambling to her feet and charging forward blindly. "He's not my father. He wouldn't kill me. He wouldn't." I did not order my men to stop her. She stumbled straight into the emperor's arms, clinging to his robes. Her face streaked with tears as she babbled hysterically. "Are you my father? Did you kill me? Tell me the truth." The emperor, who had been locked in a tense standoff with father, was caught off guard by her sudden assault. Enraged, he tried to push her away. "What's wrong with you? Get away from me this instant." But she refused to let go, clinging to him like a leech, her eyes wide and wild as she screamed at the top of her lungs. "Was it you? Was it really you? I'm your daughter. You used me. You killed me. You're not fit to be a father. I'll expose you. I'll tell everyone." The emperor's patience finally snapped. He hurled her violently to the ground and drew his sword, raising it to strike her down. Blood splattered across the floor. Someone fell to the ground with a cry. My blood turned to ice in my veins. I could only watch in stunned silence as Song Rong scrambled to the side of the fallen figure, her cries echoing through the palace halls, filled with unspeakable grief. "Mother." The long sword clattered to the ground. I bent down and picked it up, my eyes fixed on father. His entire body was trembling, his hand shaking violently as he gripped his own sword. The person who had fallen was Song Rong's mother. She was also my mother. She had sacrificed her own life to shield her beloved daughter from the emperor's blade. Mother did not look at Song Rong. Instead, she reached out her hand toward me. "Xiao Xiao." I walked toward her numbly, stopping a cautious step away. She sensed my hesitation, my coldness toward her, and gave a bitter smile. "I know you hate me. You, your father, your sister, you all hate me. I have no excuses to offer. I only beg you, for the sake of the years I raised you, spare your third sister's life." Then she turned her gaze to father, her eyes softening with a tenderness that had long been absent. "Afei, in this life, the person I wronged the most was you. He used me, but I still loved him. I'm sorry. If there is a next life. If there is a next life, I will never be your wife. I will never bring you such misery." A single tear slid down her cheek, her hand fell limply to the ground. "Mother." Song Rong's heart-wrenching scream pierced the air. I tilted my head up toward the sky, forcing back the tears burning in my eyes, and turned to look at father. "It's over, father." The rebellion raged on for nearly half a month. The bloodstains on the palace floors took a long time to fade. The reigning emperor was captured alive. Officially, it was announced that he had committed suicide in his cell, but according to father, the truth was far more brutal. He had been cut 81 times, one for each of his crimes, and left to bleed to death slowly and painfully. Yang Jiao, Marquis of Puyang, died on his way to the palace to collect his bride. They said his last words were a desperate call for his beloved princess. The Dowager Lady of Puyang was unable to bear the shock of her son's death. She followed him to the grave not long after. Song Rong went completely mad. She spent her days and nights banging her head against the walls of her cell, screaming that she would expose this person and that, only to lapse into quiet, broken mutterings that her father would never hurt her. She never understood the cruel irony of it all, that those who harm their loved ones will ultimately be destroyed by them. Father could not bring himself to have her executed. Instead, he ordered her locked away in a dark, isolated cell, to be kept under strict guard for the rest of her life. But what father did not know was that I had slipped a slow-acting poison into her food. She would not live to see the next spring. The eldest sister found out what I had done. She hesitated for a long time, then finally spoke, her voice quiet and solemn. "Xiao Xiao, you are far more suited to that throne than father ever will be." In the 5th month of that year, father ascended to the throne, donning the imperial yellow robe as the courtiers knelt before him, shouting in unison, "Long live the emperor, long live our sovereign." Some of the censors were outraged by father's act of treason. They stepped forward in the imperial court, listing his 10 major crimes for all to hear. The official histories would later record him as a traitor who had seized the throne through rebellion, a heinous criminal who had defied heaven itself. Father could not bear to have them executed, but I had no such qualms. In the same month, I was named Crown Princess, the heir to the throne, with far more real power than any mere title implied. History is always written by the victors. New men will always rise to replace the old. Let future generations argue over the rights and wrongs of our deeds. Their judgment means nothing to me.